All right, so move on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my fight prediction for this weekend's fight taking place in the sport of boxing between Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero. So this fight will be taking place in the main event of the Times Square card in New York City. This fight will be the fight and the card will be taking place Friday in New York City in Times Square. And this fight will be taking place at the welterweight division with Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero making their debuts at the 147-pound division in the sport of boxing. So I'll be sharing my storylines heading into this fight. So storyline number one is something to actually pay attention to. And I don't think a lot of people are witnessing what could be at stake for the winner. Now, Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero are fighting at the welterweight division, like I just said, but the WBA regular title will be on the line. Now, I know boxing is messy and there's too many titles because I agree with a lot of people, Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh in particular, that boxing should have one title per division. But the WBA, how the WBA does things is the WBA is the only sanctioned body that have two titles in weight classes. And the regular champion, which will be crowned to the winner of Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia. The regular champion is considered the secondary WBA champion. They're not recognized as the real champion. The WBA champion is the WBA super champion is Jaron Ennis. I know that's complicated for people that don't understand that, but Jaron Ennis is the real WBA champion at this welterweight division. Just became a unified champion a few weeks ago. So what that means is the winner of Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero could put themselves as the mandatory to fight Jaron Ennis in a unified championship fight at the welterweight division. But it's a messy situation because Ryan Garcia is already slated to fight Devin Haney in October this year, in the back end of 2025, if Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney are successful Friday night in their fights. So it's a little messy, but if Ryan Garcia wanted to go in a championship direction or Rolly Romero wanted to go in a championship direction, the winner of this fight would technically be in line mandatory-wise to fight Jaron Ennis for a unified welterweight title fight down the line in 2025. So next storyline is how sharp will Ryan Garcia look following the PED suspension? Now, everybody knows Ryan Garcia has been inactive from the sport of boxing for the last year because he was suspended for testing positive for 2 PED tests. And in the public's eyes, he cheated against Devin Haney. His biggest victory was tainted because he tested positive for 2 PED tests. And Ryan Garcia, after that, went downhill. We know the racial slurs that he said. We know that Ryan Garcia was not 100% there in the head. Ryan Garcia took some downtime to get himself back together. He looks focused, he looks rejuvenated, and he looks like he wants revenge in the sport of boxing for the biggest win of his career being taken away from him last year when it was a reverse call of Devin Haney versus him, and Devin Haney was slated to be a no contest. So I want to see how focused Ryan Garcia looks. He's back with his trainer, Derek James. Derek James, I do believe, has brought the best out of Ryan Garcia after Ryan Garcia suffered his first career loss against Gervonta Davis in 2023. So I'm looking forward to seeing how a focused Ryan Garcia looks returning after a year following his suspension in the sport of boxing. And last but not least, the following storyline is I have for Rolly Romero. Can Rolly Romero win the big one? Now, Rolly Romero has been in big fights before. He's not shy of this big moment. But when we look at how Rolly Romero has looked on the big stages of his career, he got knocked out in 2022 against Gervonta Davis with that left hook that put him through the ropes. It looked like he was going to get hit with a Rey Mysterio 619 back in 2022. Then you look at what happened in 2023 when he accidentally became the WBA super lightweight champion, defeating Ismael Barroso in 2023, which honestly, that night brings me trauma thinking about that because that was the worst stoppage in boxing history, the worst accidental boxing stoppage in boxing history, when we all know that Barroso wasn't even getting hit and Tony Meeks just waved off the fight so Rolly Romero could become a world champion by accident. But then you fast forward to the previous biggest fight of Rolly Romero's career, where he was on the co-main event of the Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu fight card in 2024 Easter weekend last year, where he got knocked out by Isaac Cruz and lost his WBA super lightweight title. So we're going to see if Rolly Romero can finally win the big one. Enough of the storylines. Let's get into the tail of the tape here. So Rolly Romero has 16 victories, 2 losses to his resume. He has 13 victories come away of knockout. Stands at 5'8" with a reach of 68 inches. Then I'm looking at King Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia has 24 victories, 1 loss to his resume. He has 20 victories come away of knockout. Stands at 5'8" with a reach of 70 inches. So both of these fighters are both 5'8", but the reach goes in favor of Ryan Garcia. And based off their sparring history that we've seen nearly a decade ago, we'll see if Ryan Garcia uses that reach to his advantage. Now, let's get to the following game plans that I have for this fight. Starting off with Rolly Romero. I think Rolly Romero is going to have to take advantage of the mistakes that Ryan Garcia makes defensively. Now, Ryan Garcia, I think, is an A- fighter, pushing to be an A+ fighter, in my opinion, in the sport of boxing, but he has to prove it. And one of the flaws that Ryan Garcia has is being alert defensively. At times, Ryan Garcia will leave his chin up in the air while he's throwing a punch or trying to land the signature check left hook. And that has caught Ryan Garcia in trouble at times in the past. He got dropped by Luke Campbell in 2021 when Luke Campbell countered him and hit him with a hook, sent him to the canvas. This happened when Ryan Garcia fought Gervonta Davis. When Ryan Garcia got a little greedy in the second round of that fight, got caught with a perfect counter punch by Gervonta Davis, left his chin up in the air, and Ryan Garcia went to the canvas. Then you look at the fight even last year against Devin Haney. He got spooked by a left hook that Devin Haney threw at him. But Ryan Garcia bounced back up and said, come on, bring it. We don't know if that was the PED's target or not that saved him from a possible knockdown that night. But I've seen Ryan Garcia do this mistake over and over and over again in the sport of boxing, and he's paid for it at times. But Rolly Romero is a powerful puncher, and you can't afford to leave your chin up in the air against a powerful puncher like Rolly Romero. So I think Rolly Romero should capitalize on that. Next, I think Rolly Romero should use his jab. Now, Rolly Romero does have a stiff jab. He has a stiff jab to keep his opponents off of him, and he does a good job setting the tempo of the fight based off of that stiff jab, keeping his opponents off of him. And I go back to that fight that he had against Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis was playing with Rolly, but that night in 2022, there was a stiff jab that kept Gervonta Davis off of him. He has a stiff jab that has kept several opponents in his boxing career off of him. But that's the way how he knows that he's in control. As awkward as it looks when he's in the ring, that stiff jab that keeps his opponents off of him, his opponents end up respecting Rolly Romero's power and should do that against a powerful puncher in Ryan Garcia. Last but not least, I think Rolly Romero should fight on the inside. Now, if Rolly Romero can fight on the inside, he could have some success against Ryan Garcia. Rolly is a fighter that doesn't back down from clinches. Now, if you guys know, in the sport of boxing, when there can be some clinching or some hugging going on, that's where the referee will step in. Rolly Romero is actually a fighter that if he's stuck in the clinch, he will fight his way out of it himself. And that's where you get the best version of Rolly Romero, in my opinion, when Rolly is forced to fight in the clinch. And when he is fighting in the clinch, that's when he can land some powerful shots, land some hooks, land some uppercuts, go down to the body to slow his opponents down, create damage at the body. I think there's some perfect game plans for Rolly Romero to follow if he wants to walk out of New York City and Madison Times Square with a victory. So those are the following game plans that I have for Rolly Romero. Now, next for Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is going to have to establish the jab. Now, Ryan Garcia, he is known for his signature check left hook, but I've seen on the tape and watching his fights that Ryan Garcia is actually starting to develop a jab. And I've seen this since 2022, how a jab has been developed in his arsenal and his toolbox. A lot of people don't know how to, don't really talk about it because the impressive hand speed that he has to keep his opponents off balance or make them second guess is what makes Ryan Garcia special all along. But that stiff jab, and it's also been established pretty well since he's been partnered up with Derek James his last 2 fights against Oscar Duarte and Devin Haney, that jab is starting to be a little more lethal, and he's finding more success with it because he's learning how to utilize it the correct way. So I think he should do that against Rolly Romero. Next, I think Ryan Garcia should fight in different angles. Now, again, the working with Derek James has brought the best out of Ryan. Ryan Garcia has great footwork now. He was very flat-footed in the past, but now Ryan Garcia, his footwork has improved. He can fight in different angles, and that's going to benefit him when he fights Rolly Romero. Rolly Romero is very flat-footed, does not have good footwork, and if he can fight in different angles and fight in different lateral movements to catch Rolly Romero off guard, that's where we can see the best version of Ryan Garcia in this fight against Rolly Romero. And that's where Rolly Romero, also for being flat-footed, he's flat-footed, he likes to overextend his punches. He likes to overextend and throw punches, which is not a good look against someone that has pretty good footwork. I won't say elite, but pretty good footwork. So I think Ryan Garcia should capitalize on that. And last but not least, Ryan Garcia should capitalize with his signature check left hook. And that's the best punch. And Ryan Garcia's arsenal does a good job of baiting his opponents in with taking a step back. He takes a step back and then boom, the signature check left hook. He likes to use feints and he likes to use feints, the straight right or the straight left, and that's where he baits his opponents in to land the signature check left hook. So I think that's some perfect game plans that I have for Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero heading into this weekend's fight. But with that being said, I'm going to go with Ryan Garcia to defeat Rolly Romero in this fight by knockout. I think Ryan Garcia is going to have an impressive debut at the welterweight division. I just believe that Ryan Garcia at the end of the day is too much for Rolly Romero to handle. I like Ryan getting him out of there within 6 to 7 rounds. And people could base the sparring videos that we've seen in the past with Rolly and Ryan, that was nearly a decade ago, and both fighters are completely different at this particular point of their careers. So Ryan Garcia, I think he just has the better overall boxing skills in his toolbox and his arsenal. I think Ryan Garcia can fight at different angles, like I just touched up on a few moments ago. His footwork has been tremendous since partnering up with Derek James. He can fight in different angles, fighting different lateral movements, and he was very flat-footed before working with Derek James, so I think that's brought the best out of him. But I think Ryan Garcia is going to lead with his jab. I think he's starting to establish a good jab. A lot of people like to bring up the check left hook, but he is starting to establish a jab. I think he's going to keep a stiff jab on Rolly Romero to keep him off him, land some straight punches, and then that's when the signature check left hook is going to come into play. I've seen Rolly Romero get hurt with some left hooks in the past. Look at the Gervonta Davis knockout back in 2022. Look at how Isaac Cruz was establishing the left hook that when he knocked out Rolly Romero last year in Easter weekend. So Rolly Romero is in a world of trouble against Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is out to prove that he is a legitimate threat at this welterweight division, and he's going to be motivated because if you get this win here and Devin Haney wins, then the rematch between those two respective fighters will happen in October. But give me Ryan Garcia to defeat Rolly Romero by knockout within 6 to 7 rounds this weekend in the sport of boxing.